The Evil Dead was written and directed by the incredible Sam Raimi back in 1981 and is to this day one of the greatest horror films of all time. Starred at the time an unknown Bruce Campbell, Sandweiss, and Betsy Baker. Now, the film itself focuses on 5 college students vacationing in an isolated cabin in a remote wooded area, and after they find an audio tape that, when played, releases a legion of demons and spirits, members of the group suffer from demonic possession, leading to increasingly gory mayhem. It's an iconic film that has gone on to influence some of the greatest in the business, from Peter Jackson to even Edgar Wright. The film was such a success it spawned a 2013 remake and 2 sequels, Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. Now, what's more surprising is the budget of the movie versus the box office profit. The movie cost between $350,000 to $400,000 and raked in a whopping $2.4 million, which for an indie horror is huge. Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and producer Robert Tapert fought incredibly hard through no CGI, sticky blood made from everyday household items, and of course through the reluctance of major studios to get on board to make a cult classic. I bet they have regrets now. Now, the film was initially based on Sam Raimi's short film, Within the Woods, a 30-minute Super 8 film which starred Bruce Campbell again. In a 1982 interview, Raimi stated, I quote, "We used Within the Woods to show investors what kind of film they'd be buying into. They needed tangible proof that we could make a movie of professional quality. And that they did. I mean, just look at The Evil Dead now." An interesting nugget of information for you movie buffs out there, did you know? Before becoming the Oscar-winning filmmaker duo Joel and Ethan Coen, Joel got his start as an assistant editor on The Evil Dead, and inspired by Raimi's DIY filmmaking, Joel and Ethan created a pitch trailer to raise money for their first feature, Blood Simple. The more you know. Now back to The Evil Dead. The film was a hardship for most of the cast and crew, with it being filmed in an actual cabin in Morristown, Tennessee, secluded from the nearby town. Bruce Campbell detailed to DVD Talk among the many hellish situations the cast and crew dealt with were diving into freezing cold swamps and Raimi getting chased by a bull. I quote, "We were going to rural Tennessee, 1979, where there's moonshine, squatters, and it was the real deal. The South was the South in 1979. There was no franchise this or franchise that. It was a completely different world and mentality. We used real ammunition in the shotgun and we shot it at a real cabin in the woods, with hunters and howling dogs in the background. The shoot was such a grueling process that even director Sam Raimi worked himself so hard he passed out during filming." At Spooky Empire's reunion, Bart Pierce, who did visual effects for the film, noted how much the filming took a toll on Raimi. The story goes that Raimi fainted during the shooting of the film's dismemberment scene. He had stayed up all night shooting and wrote all day. In order to even wake up in the mornings, the crew took an ice bucket of water and threw it onto him until he gained consciousness. Now, spookier still, the cabin in which they shot in has its very own spooky backstory. During an interview with John Gallagher, Raimi recounted a horror story involving 3 generations of women who previously occupied the cabin. I quote, "One night during a thunderstorm, this little girl woke up and was scared by the lightning happening around the cabin. She ran into her mother's room and, pulling back the covers, climbing into bed with her, she found that her mother was dead. She was so frightened she ran into her grandmother's room, and somehow that same evening, she had died also. The little girl ran into the storm to this little farmhouse and was found screaming and banging on the doors. The family there took care of her after that, and no one lived in the cabin since. The little girl, who's now an old woman, during thunderstorms after that, would often be found wandering around the woods. However, the kicker is that the story came to life during filming, with Raimi going on to state, I quote, "As we were shooting, this fella was looking for the woman, saying that because there was a thunderstorm the night before, he was looking for the woman because it was possible she had returned to the cabin. As far as we know, they never found her." Wow. That's absolutely terrifying. Better yet, because the film had such a low budget, everything you saw in it was real. I mean, aside from the infamous tree scene, of course. Bruce Campbell has said before, everything was real during filming. I quote, "The illegal substance known as marijuana was somehow forced upon us in Tennessee. I was forced to ingest this marijuana by a local reprobate, and I therefore became, let's just say, affected by THC. I therefore lost any sense of time and where I was, and that's the time that Sam Raimi decided that he needed to shoot Ash having a breakdown. classic. It's beginning to sound less forced and more planned, in my opinion. Despite this, upon release the film was met with rave reviews, even by the king of horror himself, Stephen King, calling it, I quote, the most ferociously original film of the year, which in turn allowed it to secure an international distributor, New Line Cinema, who at the time was relatively unknown. Now, of course, like a lot of low-budget horror films, censorship came into play. Because of its graphic violence, specifically a tree rape scene, the original version of the movie was banned in several countries, including Finland, Germany, Iceland, and Ireland, with many describing the tree rape as being misogynistic. However, a heavily edited version was made legally available in 1992, and in 2001 an uncut German DVD version was released. Back to the tree rape though. As said before, the initial release of the film was met with a lot of backlash for its extreme violence, excessive blood, and of course the scene in which Cheryl is assaulted by a tree, causing uproar among viewers and critics. However, did you know? Raimi himself regrets the scene. I bet he does. I quote, "It was unnecessarily gratuitous and a little too brutal. My goal was not to offend people. My judgment was a little wrong at the time." Preach. Too much moonshine. Like most cult classics, the film over time has garnered more and more popular votes, with its current rating on Rotten Tomatoes displaying a very impressive 95%. With Empire stating, "This classic low-budget horror film combines just the right amount of gore and black humor, giving The Evil Dead an equal amount of thrills and laughs." Now, while it did receive favorable reviews, it failed to establish Raimi's reputation. However, it was a box office success, which led to Raimi and Campbell teaming up once again for another movie. Yet still, nothing sparked. Thankfully though, Raimi had studio support to make a sequel to The Evil Dead, which he decided to make out of desperation, yet has become equally as popular as the first. Evil Dead 2 was released in 1987, and a second sequel in 1993 called Army of Darkness, with Campbell returning as the lead, Ash Williams, in both films. Evil Dead 2 received critical acclaim and is often considered to be better than the original movie. Evil Dead and its sequels have become one of the largest cult film trilogies in history. The film ultimately launched the careers of both Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, who have since collaborated together frequently, virtually in every single film. Campbell's role as Ash in Evil Dead was defining, often being compared to roles ranging from his performance of Elvis Presley in the film Bubba Hotep to the demon in the X-Files episode Terms of Endearment. The Evil Dead has in turn spawned a media empire, with a video game adaptation of the same name being made for the Commodore 64 in 1984, as well as a trilogy of survival horror games in the 1990s and early 2000s. Evil Dead, Hail to the King, Evil Dead, A Fistful of Boomstick, and Evil Dead Regeneration. The character Ash even became the main character of a comic book franchise, which saw him fight both Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees in the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash series, and in January 2008, Dark Horse Comics began releasing a 4-part monthly comic book miniseries written by Mark Verheiden and drawn by John Bolton based on The Evil Dead. Better yet, the film even inspired a stage musical aptly titled Evil Dead the Musical, which was produced with permission of Raimi and Campbell and has been running since 2003. In 2015, an ongoing television continuation of the films called Ash vs. Evil Dead premiered on the Starz network, with Sam Raimi writing and directing the pilot and served as the executive producer, and of course, Campbell reprised his role as Ash during the 3 seasons it was on the air. However, bad news for the folks looking to visit the set of this iconic cult classic. After the release of the film, many people began trespassing onto the filming location in Morristown. In 1982, the cabin was burned down by drunken trespassers. Although the cabin is gone, the chimney remains, which many people now take stones from. This is why we can't have nice things. Now, of course, like all great things, a terrible human being came along in 2013 and remade The Evil Dead. Now, I shouldn't be too hard on it because it actually wasn't that bad. It was actually pretty good. The film was even produced by Raimi and Campbell and has an approval rating of 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics saying, I quote, "It may lack the absurd humor that underlined the original, but the new look Evil Dead compensates with brutal terror, gory scenes, and gleefully bloody violence. It's definitely worth your time." Well, there we have it. Are you an Evil Dead fan? What other 80s classics would you like us to cover on It Came From the 80s? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos, Top 5 Scary Cursed Games You Should Never Play Part 2. Jazzy said, "Hi random person scrolling down the comments, I hope you have a good day, and I hope it's the best day of your life. I know this will get lost fast though." It did not get lost. That's very sweet. Hope you also have an incredible day. Kirk Morrison said, "Can I just play Risk instead? It seems to be safer." Safer for you perhaps, but not if I'm playing. Nobody survives if I'm playing. I've killed people. Cut that out. They might believe me. Jackie G said, Lucy, where did you get your sweater? It looks cozy. I would trust a wreck from someone who lived in 2 cold countries. I believe I got it from Topshop. It was a while ago though, so don't take my word for it. I also don't even remember what sweater I'm wearing in the video you're talking about, so it's probably Topshop. DC Carter said, Lucy, we can't let Joss do any more scary tier lists. Watch the last one and see if you agree. Halloween remake was hot trash. I bring this to you because I trust your opinion. Oh, believe me, I saw it. I even edited that video. Me and Joss have battles daily about her taste in not just horror films, but films in general. She's here right now. Yes. We will never agree, but we all have different opinions, I guess. Mine is just the right one. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later.